All right, strap yourselves in, because today we're diving deep into one of the most pivotal naval battles in history, the Battle of Tsushima.
Ah, sushi.
We're talking empires clashing, underdog victories, and a technological revolution at sea. And to guide us through this, well, we've got some incredible firsthand accounts and historical analyses.
Should be quite a story.
Absolutely. So, to set the stage, this is the Russo-Japanese War, 1905. Russia's ambitions in the Far East have been challenged by, well, a rapidly modernizing Japan.
Yeah, a real clash of titans brewing for a while by this point.
And it all comes to a head in the Tsushima Strait. Now, before we get to the actual battle, can you give us a bit of context? What's the situation like for both sides going into this?
Well, things aren't looking too rosy for Russia, to be honest.
Not rosy at all.
Their Pacific fleet's already taken some serious hits, Port Arthur, the LSE. They're pitting all their hopes on this Second Pacific Squadron, a fleet that sailed all the way from the Baltic.
All the way from the Baltic. Talk about a logistical nightmare. I mean, I've read about this journey, months at sea, harsh conditions, and then there's that whole incident with the British fishing boats, right?
Ah, yes, the Dogger Bank incident. Mistook them for Japanese torpedo boats, opened fire.
Almost brought Britain into the war on Japan's side.
Yeah, narrowly avoided disaster there. But it just goes to show the immense pressure this Russian fleet was under. Exhausted before they even reached the Pacific.
So they limp into the Tsushima Strait. Why is this location so crucial?
It's the gateway to Vladivostok, Russia's only major port in the Far East. If they can get there, they can refit, resupply.
Okay, so it's their lifeline.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But for the Japanese, it's the perfect choke point. A chance to intercept the Russian fleet, cut off their lifeline, and possibly win the war.
High stakes. And it all kicks off with a twist of fate, right? A Japanese scouting vessel spots the Russian fleet, shrouded in fog, but the thing that gives them away, the lights from a hospital ship.
Talk about bad luck.
Sometimes history hinges on the smallest things.
It does. But the Japanese had another advantage up their sleeve. Wireless telegraphy.
Ah, radio communication, cutting-edge stuff back then.
Game changer in naval warfare. The Russians are sailing practically blind. Meanwhile, the Japanese have real-time intel on their every move. Admiral Tugo, the Japanese commander, he's able to position his fleet perfectly for the attack.
Tugo sounds like a fascinating figure. I read his message to the fleet before the battle, something like, "The Empire's fate depends on this battle. Let every man do his utmost duty."
Powerful stuff. And he's got the experience to back it up. Tugo had already faced down several Russian admirals earlier in the war. He knows their tactics, their weaknesses.
So the stage is set, tensions are high, first shots fired. Take us through the battle itself. How does this clash of titans unfold?
Well, it starts with a classic naval maneuver. To crossing the T. Tugo gets his fleet perpendicular to the Russian line, concentrates his firepower, while the Russians can only respond with their forward guns.
Textbook tactic.
Textbook and devastating. And remember what we said about the Japanese having superior gunnery.
Right, and those Shimo's high-explosive shells, didn't they make their debut at Tsushima?
They did. Designed to cause fires, absolute havoc. Russian accounts describe ships being torn apart, decks engulfed in flames, men jumping overboard to escape the inferno.
Horrific. And as if the daylight bombardment wasn't enough, the Japanese weren't done yet. Nighttime torpedo attacks.
Oh yeah, relentless. As darkness falls, Japanese destroyers and torpedo boats, they just swarm the scattered Russian fleet. You know the sinking of the battleship Navarin, for example? Over 600 crewmen, only 3 survive.
A stark reminder of how brutal naval battles were.
Absolutely chaotic. And again, the Japanese training, their torpedoes, it all just outclasses the Russians. And let's not forget that wireless advantage.
Right. While the Russians are fumbling around in the dark trying to use searchlights, the Japanese know exactly where they are.
Striking with deadly precision.
So by this point, the Russian fleet's decimated, demoralized, and in complete disarray. What happens next? Any chance they can turn things around?
Well, Admiral Rozhesvinsky, he's injured. Rear Admiral Nabogatov takes command. He's facing, let's be honest, a pretty grim reality.
Yeah, overwhelming Japanese firepower, running out of ammo, morale's in the gutter.
Exactly. He knows further resistance is pointless, just going to lead to more death. So he makes a decision.
A tough decision.
He orders his ships to raise the white flag. Surrender. His words to his men, "You are young, and it is you who will one day retrieve the honor and glory of the Russian Navy."
Poignant. Tragic, but incredibly poignant. Choosing to save lives rather than fight a hopeless battle.
He knew he'd face consequences for surrendering.
He did. Court-martialed, imprisoned, though eventually pardoned.
A crushing defeat for Russia, no doubt, but it also revealed a lot about the character of some of their officers.
And so ends the Battle of Tsushima, a decisive victory for Japan, a turning point in naval history. But as we'll see, the story doesn't end there. The aftershocks of this battle, they're going to be felt across the world for decades to come.
Welcome back. We just witnessed the final curtain fall on the Battle of Tsushima, but the story's far from over. Because the implications of this clash, they go way beyond just who won or lost on that particular day.
Oh yeah, the ripples from Tsushima, they were felt across the globe.
So it's time to explore those ripple effects, the historical dominoes that tumbled from this seemingly remote strait all the way to, well, a world war.
Exactly, a world war.
Give me those dominoes. How did this Japanese victory over Russia in the Pacific end up influencing events all the way in Europe?
Well, for starters, it significantly weakened Russia's standing on the world stage.
Okay, so it's more than just the ships they lost. It's this perception of weakness.
Exactly. Losing almost an entire fleet like that, it's a huge blow to their prestige, their military power. And this, of course, emboldened other European powers, especially Germany, who saw an opportunity. So Germany, already a rising industrial and military power, they see Russia stumble and think, our time is now.
Yeah, essentially. They become more assertive, more willing to, let's say, take risks. And this, of course, worried other European powers, particularly France and Britain.
Right, they're already wary of Germany's growing strength, and now Russia's out of the picture, at least temporarily. So how does Britain, who had actually supported Japan in the war, react to all of this?
Well, with Russia kind of sidelined, Britain can focus its attention on Germany's ambitions, particularly their naval ambitions.
The Anglo-German naval race. It was already underway, wasn't it?
It was, but Tsushima just pours fuel on the fire.
Because now it's not just a theoretical threat. Tsushima is a demonstration of just how decisive naval power can be in the 20th century.
Exactly. The battle, it highlighted the importance of speed, long-range gunnery, decisive firepower. And all of this leads directly to one of the most significant developments in naval history, the Dreadnought.
The HMS Dreadnought, the ship that made all other battleships obsolete practically overnight.
Precisely. Launched just a year after Tsushima. Bigger, faster, armed with a uniform battery of massive guns. It just rendered all existing battleships pretty much useless in comparison.
So it wasn't just a new ship, it was a whole new philosophy of naval warfare.
Absolutely. And this, of course, triggered a frantic arms race as every major power scrambled to build their own dreadnoughts.
I mean, the cost must have been astronomical.
Oh, it was. But the fear of falling behind, that was even greater.
And I imagine this obsession with having the most powerful ships, it just contributed to the growing tensions in Europe, pushing the world closer and closer to the brink.
Oh, absolutely. And it wasn't just the ships themselves. Tsushima forced naval strategists to rethink tactics, doctrine. The age of close-range brawls between ships, well, that was over. Now it was all about long-range engagements, scouting, communication.
Which, if you recall from part 1, was a Japanese strength, thanks to their mastery of wireless telegraphy. They were ahead of the curve in a way that really influenced naval thinking for decades.
It's remarkable to think that a battle fought off the coast of Japan could have such a profound impact on the future of naval warfare.
Absolutely. But let's not forget the human cost of this conflict. Thousands of men lost their lives. We talked about the horrific casualties, the sinking of ships, what happened to the survivors, specifically the Russian prisoners of war.
Well, actually, the Japanese treated their prisoners with, surprisingly, a good deal of compassion. They provided medical care, food, even allowed some prisoners to send letters home.
That's unexpected. Given the brutality we often associate with war, especially back then, it's heartening to hear about these moments of humanity.
It really speaks volumes about the character of Admiral Tokus and the Japanese people. Despite their decisive victory, they showed a level of respect for their defeated enemies. Not always common.
Now, Japan, they were obviously the victors at Tsushima, but was this victory ultimately a good thing for them?
That's a complex question.
It must be.
In the short term, yeah, Tsushima solidified Japan's position as a major power in the Pacific. They gained territory, prestige, a sense of national pride.
Right.
But, it's possible this very victory also fostered a sense of military superiority within Japan. It might have contributed to their increasingly aggressive foreign policy in the decades leading up to World War II.
So Tsushima gave them power, but also maybe a sense of overconfidence.
Perhaps. Having defeated a European giant like Russia, some Japanese leaders, they might have underestimated the challenges they would face in future conflicts.
It's a classic case of unintended consequences. A victory that seemed decisive at the time might have sown the seeds of, well, future problems.
Exactly. Tsushima is a powerful reminder that history is rarely black and white. One event can have multiple interpretations, far-reaching consequences.
We've unpacked the immediate aftermath of Tsushima, its impact on the naval arms race. But what about the really long-term consequences? How did this battle shape the world in the years leading up to World War I and beyond? Well, we'll delve into those questions in the final part of our deep dive. And we're back for the final chapter in our exploration of the Battle of Tsushima. We've seen how this clash between empires sent ripples across the world. But now it's time to zoom out even further, explore the really long-term consequences. How did this battle, fought in a seemingly remote corner of the world, end up shaping the course of the entire 20th century?
It's almost like Tsushima planted a seed, one that grew into this tangled web of alliances, rivalries, and ultimately the devastating conflict we know as World War I.
Okay, unpack that for me. How could a naval battle in the Pacific plant the seeds for a global war in Europe?
Well, remember how we talked about Russia being weakened by their defeat? This power vacuum, it didn't go unnoticed by other nations, especially Germany.
Right, they saw an opportunity to, expand their influence, challenge the existing order.
Exactly. They become more assertive, more willing to take risks. And this, of course, worried other European powers like France and Britain, who were already wary of Germany's growing strength.
So you've got these major powers in Europe all eyeing each other suspiciously, their alliances shifting like sand dunes. And then you throw in the dreadnought race we talked about. Did Tsushima really have that much of an impact on the arms race?
Oh, absolutely. Tsushima was a wake-up call for the world's navies. It demonstrated the power of speed, long-range gunnery, big guns. The HMS Dreadnought, launched by Britain just a year after Tsushima, was a direct response to the lessons of that battle.
And the Dreadnought, in turn, set off a chain reaction, didn't it? Every other major naval power, they had to build their own dreadnoughts to keep up.
It became an obsession, a symbol of national pride and power. Nations pouring enormous resources into building these massive warships, even as the political climate in Europe was, growing more and more unstable.
It's almost as if they were sleepwalking towards war, each step driven by fear and this need to outdo their rivals.
In a way, yes. Tsushima, though thousands of miles away, it helped create this atmosphere of suspicion, this competition that made war more likely.
It's a fascinating example of how these seemingly isolated events can have totally unforeseen consequences.
Yeah, that's history for you.
Now, we can't say for certain that Tsushima directly caused World War I, but it certainly played a role in shaping the conditions that made the war possible.
Think of it like a line of dominoes. Tsushima may not have been the first one to fall, but it certainly pushed a few key pieces into place, setting off that chain reaction.
It's a powerful image, and it makes you realize just how interconnected the world really is. But we've explored the battleships, the admirals, the political maneuvering. Let's not forget the human side of this story. Thousands of men lost their lives in this conflict. What can we learn from their sacrifice?
I think Tsushima reminds us that history isn't just about dates and battles. It's about people, real people, with families, hopes, and dreams. Their stories deserve to be remembered not just as statistics, but as individuals caught up in these huge events.
It's a sobering thought and a reminder that the decisions made by leaders, they have real human consequences.
And a reminder of the importance of, diplomacy, communication, understanding. Perhaps if the leaders of the early 20th century had learned the right lessons from Tsushima, the world might have been spared the horrors of World War I.
It's a powerful message, and one that resonates even today as we face, let's be honest, new challenges, uncertainties on the global stage.
Absolutely. History may not repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. And by studying the past, we can hopefully learn from its mistakes and strive for a more peaceful future.
Well said. We've reached the end of our deep dive into the Battle of Tsushima. We hope you've enjoyed this journey through history, and we encourage you to explore further, read the accounts of those who lived through these events, and just contemplate the lessons they hold for us today.
Remember, history is not just a collection of facts and dates. It's a living tapestry, woven with the threads of human experience. It's up to us to learn from it, to understand it, and use it to build a better future.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds curious.